Nice, that's dope. Yeah, nice. So that's like the opening screen basically before the streaming starts. That's like, yeah. So once you start, nice. Yeah, that was nice. Wait, how? All right, I guess I'll start. Whoever shows. Um, all right, welcome. Today, well, last week, we covered. We got a little bit into CapCut. Talked about the workspace, a brief overview of what the software is and what everything does. And there's a lot more to talk about and go in depth to, but uh, just wanted to cover an overview of it just to get you guys familiar with it. Um, and yeah, so today I want to go over frame rate, and you know that includes slow motion, time lapse, different ways to utilize frame rates and what that means for video editing, because frame rate is a cinematography camera term, but it's very important in the world of video editing as well, because it does affect the way a clip looks if it's shot in different frame rates. And there may be some people who don't have never ever heard of frame rate and may not even know what that is. So we'll talk about that as well. And then yeah, going a little bit more into CapCut, uh, point out some other things like keyframes, and I'll show a video as well. But yeah, I think that's what most of today will be. So I'll share my screen. Okay. So you should be seeing this frame rates. So frame rate, for people who've never heard of it, um, is basically the amount of shots you see in a certain amount of time, or the amount of images you see in a certain amount of time. And I'll play some examples to give you a visual of what it all means, but that's what it means pretty much. The amount of shots or amount of images you see in a certain amount of time is usually measured in seconds. So you may have heard 30 frames per second, 60 frames per second, 120 frames per second. And yeah, so those are different amounts of frames in a second. So if you hear 30 frames per second, that means you get 30 frames in 1 second. If you hear 60 frames, that means you get 60 frames in 1 second. But what does that even mean? And what is that? How does that translate to what we see? And uh, why does that even matter? Well, frame rate matters because the difference. So if we take 30 frames versus 60 frames, for example, if you watch a movie in 30 frames versus 60 frames, you're going to get a different look, because there are more or less shots that you see in a second. So if you picture this, right, if you see a 30 frame clip compared to a 60 frame clip, what would be the difference? Well, the 60 frame clip will look a lot more smoother. It'll look a lot smoother, and it'll flow uh, and feel a different way. And that would make sense because you have more shots in a second. So uh, frame rate is important to video editing because you get different looks depending on what frame rate you shoot in or what frame rate you see. Most movies are shot in 25 frames per second. So most like film cameras, if you want to shoot a video that's cinematic or movie like, you typically shoot between 25 and 25 and 35 frames a second to really get that cinematic look. The more you bump it up, so from 60 to 120, you get a more fluid, a more, I would say, um, a softer visual. So I'll show an example of uh, the difference, but I want to show this visual to give you a better idea of what I mean. So here's just a regular line showing how many shots you see in 1 second. So this line is 1 second. So you can see from 60 frames, 24% versus 24. 24, you get 24 frames in 1 second. 60, you get 60 frames in 1 second. So you get a lot more images in seconds than you do with 24 frames. So this 60 frame footage will look a lot more smoother. It'll look definitely, it'll be easier for your eyes to see the motion of the video. And so these are one of those things that is easier to visualize, you know, than, explain. But I'll show this example to give you a better idea. So this video shows a comparison between 24, 30, and 60 frames. And the term frame rate, you're not going to only hear this in video, you might hear this in gaming as well. So any motion or any type of video or anything that just includes motion that you're recording, you will have frames. So there are certain video games, that you watch. If you watch them or play them as 30 frames or 60 frames, you'll see 60 frame and 30 feel a lot different. 60 will be a lot kind of fluid. 30 will be a lot more rigid and more cinematic. So I'm gonna just play this clip to just show you what I mean. So like I said, most movies are between 25 and 30. So this is what you may typically see with most videos. And you may not even notice a difference, but this is 24 frames. So this looks regular, right? Regular, how we usually see video. Okay, so here's 30 frames. You may or might not see a difference here either. Let's see. That's 30, right? Now here's 60. And then they're going to put them all together so you can really see them side by side. Okay, so that was 60. Now, if we put them all three together, you'll see the difference. But again, and notice the 24 versus the 60. The 24 frames, you can kind of see the choppiness compared to the 60 frame where it's a lot more smooth. So just keep an eye on those and you'll see. A lot more choppy, smooth. If we slow it down, and you can see how smooth this is when you slow it down. So this is why the movies, if they want to shoot slow-mo, they increase the frame rate. So it gives them this nice, smooth look when you slow it down. Versus if we slow down this, we see it's choppy. It's not as fluid of a motion compared to this. So depending on what you want, your frame rate will play a part in that. So, and again, that's why those shots look different, because in the 60 frame clip, you have more shots in a second that you can actually see versus 24, where there's not as many compared to that 60. So you're only seeing 24 shots versus 60 frames where you get more in 1 second. So it's more fluid because you have more shots to work with and more shots in the sequence. Um, so yeah. So I'll play another video from I Am Legend. Okay. So here's the movie Gemini Man. So this first clip is 25 frames per second. So if I'm not mistaken, I believe this movie was shot in 25 frames or 60, one of the two. And then they change the frame rate depending on what type of shot that they wanted. So here's 25 frames. Right? You may not notice anything different. It may look like just a standard movie, nothing too out of the ordinary. So that was 25 frames. So now let's 60 frames. So you'll see this is a lot more fluid and smooth. You can actually see it in the camera motion. How it looks kind of fast paced. See how smooth it looks. That's the beauty of shooting in a higher frame rate. Now, stylistically and creatively, there may be a preference over what you like to see. So, that 25 frame video, that's what we're used to seeing, but the 60 frame video looks smoother. So, uh, there is a big difference. And so, shooting in 25 frames versus 60 frames or 30 frames and 120, the decision to decide what frame rate to shoot at is depending on what type of look and shot you want, right? So if you want something, and I'll show some video examples of this. Let's say you want an action scene, and let's say you got two villains, or sorry, a hero and a villain fighting each other, and you want to show the action of that scene, and you want to really show the physicality and motion of that scene. Would you shoot that in 25 frames or would you shoot that in 60 frames? Well, it depends. There's no right or wrong. It just depends on what look you want. So if you were to shoot a fight scene in 25 frames per second, uh, it'll look kind of like just a regular scene, depending on the type of shots and the way that they shoot it. But you won't really notice a visual difference. But if you do an action scene in 60 frames per second, then you could really see the speed of the hits. You can really see the way that their body moves. Is more depth in the motion, and you could really see it move in real time. So stylistically, that is up to whatever shot that you want or emotion that you're trying to give off. So let me show another example. So this is Infinity War. So this may give you a better idea of what I'm talking about. Let me find. Well, I'll play this one and then I'll move on. So this is 24 frames. What you see in theaters, if you saw the movie theaters, this is the original look of it. Now here's 60. This feels like kind of slow motion, but fluid at the same time. There. And a note I want to make is that this isn't real 60. Like they edited that to make it look 60 frames, but that isn't like the real 60 frames. They edited it just to fit this video and show you the comparison. But the 24, if you ask like what do you think looks better, 24 or 60, I would say the 24 because it's more cinematic. It looks there's no really big fight scenes or anything with a lot of physicality or motion. It's a lot of just like explosions and stuff. That type of stuff you kind of want to see in 24 frames because it looks more realistic. It looks like something that you'll actually see in real life. I think our eyes are like 30 frames per second of how we view the world or something like that. So it fits more naturally to how we perceive the world. Or 60, where you can tell something is kind of off or something that's not how the real world is. Um, you know, see, so that's kind of where you see the difference at. But it could depending on the scene or the shot. 60 might look better, but 24 for most things looks more realistic. So that's why a lot of movies shoot 24 because it's closer to reality. Um, so yeah, but let me. So let's play this last video and then we'll move on. But I wanna. Oh yeah, another thing I want to mention is so how does frame rate relate to video editing, right? So why does this matter as a video editor about frame rate? Well, if if you're editing a movie and the director or the script it tells you you have, let's say you have a fight scene or something, and the director says this shot will look amazing in slow motion, right? What if we made this shot slow motion? Like in the Matrix movie, there's a lot of slow motion and stuff. You know, the director says, okay, let's make this scene slow motion. Well, the cinematographer or the cameraman has to shoot in a certain frame rate to get the best slow mo possible. And then once they get that shot, they give the footage to the video editor. And now the video editor sees, okay, this shot was filmed in 60 frames. Let me, this shot was shot at 60 frames. So let me slow this down. So uh, to slow it down in the smoothest way possible, you have to shoot at a higher frame rate. So the video editor needs to know what frame rate was shot so they know whether I need to slow this video down or whether I need to speed this video up. You know, so that's super important. And that's why that communication between the cinematographer, video editor, director is extremely important. So they're all on the same page. Because if you shot a scene and let's say a slow-mo scene in 30 frames and 60 frames, you're going to get two different looks. And one's going to look better than the other one, quite frankly. So that's important to know who shot what, you know, why that was shot that way. So as the video editor, it's your job to use slow-mo and slow it down. That's not the cameraman or director. You're in control of actually how that slow motion looks. So you need to know whether, this shot is 60, 30, how can we slow this down? Because you're going to get different results. So that's why slow-mo is extremely important in the type of shots that you get. So I'll show you an example of, maybe you've seen the slow-mo guys where they like slow stuff down and explode, like they blow stuff up, but they slow it down to like 200 frames per second. Well, certain cameras go to different frame rates. So your iPhone, I believe, goes up to 120. That's the highest it could go. That's the highest amount of frames is 120 on like an average iPhone. But certain cameras, you can go higher and higher. And then more expensive cameras, you go higher and higher. So like I said, most iPhones shoot highest is 120 frames. Well, you have super expensive cameras that can shoot in 200,000 frames per second. So if we're used to seeing videos that are 30 frames per second, imagine seeing something that's 200,000 frames or 300,000 frames or 500,000 frames. You have so much more control over the footage because you have more shots in a second to work with. But those cameras are very expensive, but you get some crisp, beautiful shots if you are able to afford it. So this YouTube channel, the Slow-Mo Guys, they shoot things in 100,000 frames, 200,000 frames. I think they even shot one like 500, 800,000 frames. Like, that's insane. So I'll show one just to show you how much you can slow footage down and really get a fluid shot with the amount of frames. So let's see. Let's do this one. So this is 200 frames in a second. So one more note, that since you're able to shoot in 200,000 frames per second, that means you have 200,000 shots in 1 second. So that means you could slow your shot down extremely slow because you have more shots, so it looks more fluid and you're able to get that crisp slow-mo. So I won't play this whole thing, but let's just get to the action and then you can see the slow motion. Okay.
On a cannon on a ship or something, where it rolls back a little bit, rather than just it firing, just staying still. I said earlier, it'll eat your lunch every time. For 2 seconds. Okay, just give me a good. Okay. Down. Let's see. All right, you're ready to rock and roll. Good. Oh. How are you feeling? My spine just went. Oh. Your face when that went off was wow. Usually I'm like, right, yeah, but wow. It's not as bad as I expected it to be. Yeah. It's not. Really? It's not as bad as I expected it to be. It's over pretty quick, and it's not. Yeah, like I said, it was 42. That's with you, but it's not something that's so bad. Yeah, that like, it'll just patch your retina. Yeah. Now, I will tell you the 950 is going to be as bad. Okay. All right. Okay, here we go. Holy cow. There's the bullet. It's just like it's a white curly flame. The bullet just seems. Oh, it's ready to seal the blood. Still with it. Yeah, it's like separating. Comes out. See the bullet. Shading the body. It just looks like a really long.
So yeah, in this shot, they were able to slow it down really slow because of the frame rate, and they got the best type of shot. You can see like the bullet leave the chamber, and you can see a smoke, like it said, like a mushroom cloud. You can see all the detail, the color, like the physics of everything. You can even see the force, the force field right here. Uh, so the only way you can get that type of shot is by having an extremely expensive camera that can shoot extreme high frame rates, because they're getting all of these shots very quickly, and they're able to slow it down so you can see every second. And notice it's not choppy, it's smooth. It's a smooth slow-mo, and that's the type of slow-mo you want, because they shot it extremely high and slowed it down. And same here with this shot, they're able to reverse it too. So yeah, your iPhone would never be able to get this type of shot. Like, you got to remember, this is a bullet. You know how fast a bullet is, right? So to be able to see a bullet this fast, you have to have something that can go really slow, uh, or be able to catch something and really slow it down. So hence the name, the slow-mo guys. They're able to slow a lot of shots down and get that detail, which gives them their name. And even this shot with a bullet in the ice, only an a really high frame rate camera can capture this. Like, you can see all the detail. That's what you want. So you see the perks of being able to shoot extremely high frame rates. You can get some very detailed slow-mo shots. Um, and yeah, this is really cool. And they 50 million subscribers just by shooting things in slow motion. So it's crazy, but they make good content. So check them out, if you're interested in seeing stuff blow up in slow motion. But I like showing them because they're a good example of the possibilities that you can do with a high frame rate camera. Like, they really test it. They don't just shoot stuff, they blow up stuff, drop stuff off buildings, and a lot of different experiments. And that's the power of a high frame rate camera. You're able to do all that stuff. Uh, so yeah, I like their videos. Yeah. But nonetheless, you can still do some amazing stuff with your iPhone if you have it, because they shoot, like I said, I think 120 frames. So you can still get some good slow-mo. It may not be extreme like that, but you're still able to get some pretty good slow motion. Let's see. So let's see this one. Just skip to the slow-mo part. Yeah. So let's look about frame rates. Now, like I said, if you go high frames, so like 120 frames or 240 frames, you can slow stuff down. But what if you decrease the frame rate? What if you go to 25 frames or 15 frames or 10 frames per second? What does that look like? Um, so uh, Well, I'll just finish it off of this video. Let me just. I'll save this. So I'll play. Okay, I'll save the video. But so yeah, we talked about this commonly used frame rate 24, 30, 60, 120. So what is the best video frame rate? So the most popular rate for video is 24 frames, 30 frames, 60 frames. However, this changes depending on the desired effect you're looking to achieve. So here are some tips that Studio Bender or Studio Binder um, with some examples of what they think are used best in particular frames. So 16 frames, if you want to recreate that silent era look. 24 frames, like I said, that's most cinematic. 30 frames, use TV. 60 frames, walk-in candles. And then the higher the frames, you notice is faster activities. So like skateboarding, skiing, surfing, balloons, exploding water splashes. To get those shots, you really want to increase the frame rate. So anything that you want to slow down, so hyper slow motion, um, you shoot that in extremely high frame rates. And like I mentioned before, how do I get slow motion video? Well, slow motion video is any display of moving images that appear slower than real time. It is most commonly created by capturing frames at a higher rate than the intended display speed. There are cameras designed for slow motion, but this can be achieved with any film or video camera. Like we mentioned earlier, there are a lot of film cameras, so like the slow-mo guys, they have a camera specifically designed for hyper slow motion video. Um, I'll save this, but it's an example of slow motion in a bunch of movies, and I'll show that in a minute. But Get Out is one example. The Hurt Locker, they had a big explosion scene. I'll play that soon. Um, yeah, high speed cameras. So we really want to get that high frame rate. Phantom cameras, Sony Red cameras, Panasonic Ari, Black Magics. A lot of these cameras, basically the more expensive the camera, the more frame rate. That's typically how it goes, because that frame rate is extremely, probably second most important after the amount of light and the sensor. But the frame rate is extremely important because you get different looks off shooting different frame rates. So if you have a camera that is capable of shooting 1,000 frames versus a camera that's only capable of shooting 240 frames, well, the 1,000 frame camera is going to be a lot more expensive because you have more flexibility and more creative control over the type of shots that you can get. And now, what about fast motion? So you got slow motion, but what about fast motion? So the thing about fast motion, it doesn't really matter what frame rate, to be honest. But because you're speeding up the video anyway, so your eye can't even really notice the difference in frames because the video is sped up. So if you do like a time lapse, whether you shoot in 25 frames or 120 frames, the video is going to be sped up anyway. So it's going to look like it has more frames than it really does to begin with. But that's debatable. Some people argue that, you know, use a higher frame rate to shoot like fast motion on time lapse, but there's not really any difference. So in Studio Binder, they say to speed up video, you will still prefer to capture regular footage at an increased movie frame rate. You might think that you would need fewer frames to allow fast motion, but the general rule is that you never want fewer frames than your medium requires. Most filmmakers don't get video purely to be sped up, but prefer to speed ramp or time ramp their footage from slow motion to fast motion. The more information you have to work with, the better, even when blazing through your shots. Similar to creating slow motion video, you would then place your footage into your NLE and time ramp the footage you desire. Yeah, so like I said, if you're doing fast motion, it doesn't matter. But I guess they call it a time ramp when you go from slow motion to fast motion in the same shot. So, like, let's say you're doing a slow motion shot and then you speed it up and then slow it down again. That's a time ramp when you're changing when you're changing the speed of a shot in one scene. In that case, you would want to shoot a higher frame rate because that's the best slow motion you can get. So if you're doing it that way, it's better to shoot in higher frame because you're starting out on slow motion and then speeding up and then slowing down again. So in that case, you want higher frames because you're starting off slow. But if you just have a fast forward shot, it doesn't matter what it is. Like here, time lapse. I'll just play this really quick. So you've probably seen stuff like this, like people walking fast through time, kind of trying to show speed and passage of time. I mean, the frame rate doesn't really matter. Well, I guess it matters in this sense because you're moving around. But if you had it on a tripod, let's say, it wouldn't matter. But when you're moving around or like you have motion, you probably want to shoot a higher frame rate because you want to see that fluidness in the shot. So yeah, this shot, they probably shot this in maybe 240 frames or 120 frames. But yeah, this is good time lapse. You can see the shot is still clear and smooth, but you can still see the motion of the people in the clouds, right? Still good lighting and, you know, zooming in. So that's pretty good shot. And understanding frame rate helped achieve that. Okay, so I'll play this video and then we'll move on. So I just want to point out that some directors go against like the typical look. So like they said, 25 frames is the standard for the industry and the most cinematic. Peter Jackson, he shot his video and his film in 48 frames per second, which isn't common. Um, and they mentioned to reduce that motion blur, to reduce that strain when you're watching 3D movies. Because I don't know if like if you really paid attention or ever seen like a 3D movie or watched it, if you watch close enough, you can kind of see the blur of it. Uh, I don't know why it works that way, but I've noticed that when watching a 3D movie, you can sometimes see the motion blur. But in this case, the director chose to reduce that by shooting in a higher frame rate, so it's less, it's more shots, so it's less blur. And yeah, so that was a stylistic choice. Um, and you may have not even noticed it consciously, but subconsciously, some like you notice, okay, this is smoother, like it's less strain. Some for some reason, even if you didn't know that this movie was shot in 48 frames, when you watch it, you can see the difference in the way the movie looks, but not really put your hand on or finger on why it looks this way or why it feels this way. Well, it's because of the frame rate, and different frame rates give different looks. And that's an important part because really quick, the when you shoot something versus when you view something, that can come out completely different. So like they said, for this video, like you're watching on YouTube, this video is in 24 frames per second, but they shot the movie in a different frame rate. So to really see the full effect of the movie and its original like frames, you either have to see it in theaters or uh, watch it at home. But even at home, if you don't have uh, a TV that picks up the amount of frames that the movie is shot in, you still won't be able to really see it. So theaters are the best way to really see the movie in its full capacity if they're shot in like these different frame rates. Uh, so yeah, that's important to mention because a lot of movies that are shot in these higher frame rates, you may not even notice it when watching on your computer at home because your computer doesn't pick that up. So yeah, it looks kind of different from here than what you see in theaters. And this is what I meant by speed ramp, when you slow it down, speed it up, slow it down, speed it up. All right. Yeah. So that's just wrapping up frame rate. And yeah, the best way to just see the difference for yourself is just shoot your own stuff. I, if I'm not mistaken, like I said, the iPhone, you can shoot that in 120, maybe 240 with the newer iPhones. So slow it down, try it out. You'll notice a difference when you work on your own projects. It'll You'll understand it a lot more too because you actually have hands on and you can see the difference with your own videos. So highly advocate it. Um, Highly advocate testing your frames, seeing what they do, and yeah, seeing the results. Okay, so that's frame rates. So I'll jump into CapCut just to talk about some more concepts and show some other little tips and tricks. So I'll open up CapCut. All right. Ty, is this showing up on the stream? Like, is my screen showing CapCut? Oh, okay. All right. All right. So yeah, again, back in CapCut. Um, yeah, pretty simple like starting interface. Projects that you worked on be here. You want to start a new project, literally just press create project. So I'll just create another one, and we're in CapCut. So where do we leave off? So I'll bring some footage in here. Oh, footage. Okay. So let's talk about some other things we can do in CapCut with our footage. So once we import our footage, right here, we have it in our import window. To start editing it, simply just drag it on the timeline, what I just did, and we have our footage. And just to recap, your timeline is where you'll make your edits. So when you drag and drop, you'll drag it to your timeline, make your edits. And then you have this line, which is your playhead. This is something that's across all editing software. So from music editing to video editing, it's this line just to, it's your playhead. You use it to scrub between your track. They call it scrub, just moving through basically to make your edits. So scrubbing is the act of just moving through your footage. And then the playhead is this line, which is essentially your mouse and the timeline to see your footage and move through it. So notice wherever we put our playhead is where we um, decide what we want to do with that moment in the clip. So for example, I have my playhead in the middle. So you can click B on the keyboard or just come here and select the split tool. And if I put a cut, it cuts to where the playhead was located. And then you can also make cuts where the playhead isn't located. So you can make cuts throughout your whole footage uh, if you wanted to. And now you have individual clips. Okay. So it's this thing called turn on track magnet, which basically means it allows all your clips to come together without any spaces. But for the sake of this example, I'm gonna turn this off so we can move our clips around like this. So we have individual pieces now of our clip. So we can change the order of it. We can extend the clip or reduce it. And we basically just cut up a clip that we already had. And that's how you make cuts. Click the letter B or go up here. And you don't have many tools. If you've ever used any other softwares, you'll notice it's like a bunch of different tools that do a bunch of different things. But in CapCut, it's pretty straightforward. You have 4 tools: select, cut, select leftward, and select rightward. That's it. But in Premiere, you have a bunch of different ones. And I think that just kind of makes it more complicated. So I like that it's very simple in that sense, where everything's just right there. All the necessary things are right there in front of you. All right. And another thing too, when you import your footage, you have this details window, which I think is really important and good to have, because your details window tells you the information about your clip. It tells you the aspect ratio, the frame rate, the path, like where it was imported, and a bunch of other things. So, you know, if you want to know what frame rate you shot your video in, which you should already know, but if you don't, when you come in, you can see all the information right here. So that helps. That gives you extra info that you don't have to really figure out. It's all right in front of you. Okay, so I'll take this away. So let's bring our clip in again on our timeline. And here are some different things you can do. All right, so I think I mentioned this last class, but we have different tabs here. In our video tab, this is where you make all the changes in terms of size, you know, position. Do you want it up? Do you want it down? Do you want to rotate it? All that, you know, scale. Yeah, like I said, rotation, centering it. All that's done right here under transform. And just play with it. See what it does. See how it changes the footage. And then you have these extra modes right here. You know, if you have the pro version, you can change the visibility, how much you see. 100, see everything. 0, you see nothing. So if you ever hear opacity, that just means visibility, what you see and what you don't. So 100% opacity is, you know, you can see everything. 0%, you see nothing. We have some stabilizing effects, right, to stabilize your footage if it's shaky. You can do some of that. You can reduce the image noise. So let's say it's real grainy and noisy, and you want to remove that to get a much clearer picture. Well, they have a tab where you can select it and it reduces the noise. And then you can change the, you know, wheat levels if you want to really take it out or just take out a little, depending on what you want visually. And you have a few other things. We talked about this before, but you can also like relight your footage, which is really cool. And yeah, you have some motion blur. So if you want to add some blur to your motion to your clip, you have that. Just keep in mind it takes some time to process the request, especially if it's a long video or shot extremely high resolution like 4K. You know, some of this will take a little bit longer just because you have higher uh, quality footage that has more information. And also depending on the computer you have. I'm running on a MacBook Pro 2020, so it's okay. But you know, if you have a better computer with a, you know, higher CPU or more RAM, it may be better or faster. But so yeah, see what else we got. And yeah, those are your main points. There's a lot deeper things that we'll go into later, but in terms of just touching the software, this is what you'll see mainly. Um, yeah, changing the size, position, direction, and yep. So we just talked about speed and frame rates and slow motion and fast motion. Well, there's a way to change your speed in Premiere. I mean, in CapCut. So if you, let's say we have our clips. So again, B, the letter B is a shortcut to the blade tool to get you to cut. So if I select, so here's the clip. So let's say I want to speed this up, right? Well, here it is. So I'm gonna speed it up. Let's just see how it looks first. Speed it up 5 times. It's gonna be really fast, like that. And notice it also reduced the size of the clip now because we sped it up. So the clip's gonna be shorter because it takes less time to finish the clip because it's a faster clip now compared to if we reduce it, you know, uh, a little bit, we get a slower shot. So let's even do this. We see how it slowed down. It's still choppy because I shot this in I shot this in, I think 30 frames, but I'm reducing the speed. So you can really see those frames when you reduce it, right? It's less frames. So you'll be able to really see that. And Yep. So that's one tip to remember. And then you have a smooth slow-mo, which is a great effect. So let's try this out. So like I told you, I shot this in, let's think about this for a second. I shot this video originally in 30 frames, right? So if we want to slow this video down and make it look smooth, because there's one thing to slow it down, and then there's another thing to make it smooth, right? So you can slow down any clip. There's effects in every software where you can add slow-mo to any clip, basically. But how does the slow-mo look? Is it smooth or is it choppy? Well, that depends on the frames. So again, I shot this in 30 frames per second. So if we slow this down, it probably won't look the best because I shot this at a lower frame rate. But let's say I shot this in 120 or 60, the slow-mo will look a lot smoother or appear a lot smoother. But like I said, I shot this in 30, so we'll see those frames when we reduce the speed because we have less frames. So we'll be able to see all those frames, which gives it that choppy look, which is what we don't necessarily want. We might if that's the effect, but I want it to be smooth. So for me to accomplish that, I would have to have shot this in a higher frame rate. But CapCut has this effect where they have smooth slow-mo. So I think what it does is it adds frames to a clip to make it look slower. So for example, since I shot this in 30, it'll probably add frames to make it 60, which is cool and unique and interesting because you never that was never really a thing before to add frames to clips that's already been shot. It's either it's really always been you get what you get, and it's how it looks. But now they have information and tech now where you can do stuff. So I'm gonna click super smooth slow-mo and see what this does. Uh, and let's see if it looks choppy or not. It shouldn't, according to CapCut, but let's see. So good thing is it goes by pretty fast to process. Um, so let's see. So now it's applied. So let's see. So yeah, this looks pretty good for that. Um, you can kind of see the motion blur though, but it did a really good job with what it has. So like I said, you can see that motion blur, which is what you don't really want, but that's the best CapCut gives you for what you gave it. So in my opinion, it does pretty good for what it is in the software. So um, let me type something. All right. So let me what else? So that's a little bit about slow mo. Um, but yeah, to sum that up, if you want smooth slow mo, shoot a higher frame rate. That's the sum of it all. The higher you can go, the better your slow mo. So remember that. Um, okay. So that's how you use it in CapCut. That's how you introduce speed. So again, just to show you again, we'll cut up our clip. Here's the clip I want to slow down. Again, let's check our information, see what it is. So again, 30 frames. So you know the frame rate. So now you can adjust accordingly. So if you want to speed it up, click the video, click speed, and then just increase the speed like this, and it speeds it up. But if you want to slow it down, just reduce it. And then you can add a smooth slow-mo and then change it from frame blending or optical flow. And these do different things, right? So frame building is blending is default because it's the fastest. But if you want better results, optical flow is what you want, but it just takes longer. So uh, we'll let that process go, and then we'll see um, what happens. Um, be right back. So should be done process. So let's see how this optical flow looks. Wow, a lot better. So you don't get that motion blur. It's clear and smooth. Really good. Definitely using this. So again, if you got some slow mo that you want to slow down, use CapCut because they do a really good job of using this smooth slow mo effect to reduce it and make it look clean, make it look not choppy. So, yep, again, right here in the speed tab. So let's talk about keyframes because that is important to video editing and for a few different reasons. The first reason, if you've never heard of keyframes or keyframing, basically it's basically keyframes are points that you make. Uh, Keyframes are points that you make in your footage to give an effect over a certain amount of time. So I'll give an example to better sum this up. So let's say I have this clip here. Let's say I want to rotate this. this cut here. Let's say I want to rotate this over the amount of time that the video is on. So starts at 0 and ends at 18 seconds. So this clip is 18 seconds, right? So if I make a keyframe to rotate this throughout the whole video, I would make a keyframe at the beginning and a keyframe at the end. And I'm letting CapCut know from this point to this point, I want to rotate this clip this much. So let's do an example. So if you want to rotate anything, you have to click video and then basic. So this is your basic standard stuff, right? Size, rotation, position, all of that. So so we want to make this video rotate within the 8 seconds that is on the screen from the beginning to the end. So to do that, there's no effect or anything to do that. So you have to use a keyframe, which is information to let the software know I wanted to make this motion in this amount of time. So at the beginning, here's how to make a keyframe. So if you see the diamond, this is a diamond next to every effect or like every uh, property. There's a diamond, and that diamond is the keyframe logo. So if you see that diamond, that lets you know, okay, this can be made. This can be you can use a keyframe from this for this. So rotation, we have a diamond, so we can use a keyframe for this. So the first thing I want to do is make my first keyframe. Boom. So I made a keyframe, and we can kind of see it. Let me zoom in. So we see it's kind of off, but we see our keyframe. It's right here at the beginning. So better yet, I'm going to take it off. So I'm going to actually start it here so we can see the keyframe. So we started here. So here's our first keyframe. We let Premiere know, okay, right now, as we start, the rotation is 0. So the video is upright. So it looks like a normal video. But I'm telling Premiere, okay, at let's say 10 seconds. So I'm scrubbing through my clip and getting to the 10-second mark. I want this video to rotate 360 degrees. So now we have to, let's put 360 and then press enter. Now notice it made another keyframe. So it did it automatically. So what we basically just did was we said, okay, we want to start this video off, but boom, at the 2-second mark, I want to start my rotation motion. So I made my first keyframe to let them know, okay, I'm gonna have it at 0. But as we get to the 10-second mark, it does a 360. And we can see it change as we scrub through it. So from here, we can see the numbers go up, come up, come up, and then it stops. So we basically told CapCut from 2 seconds to 10 seconds, this clip should rotate 360 degrees. And that's what a keyframe is used for. It's used to indicate motion and animation. So this is just with rotation, but let's see how we can do this with scale. So let's go back to, let's say, okay, where do we want to start let's say we want to zoom out, or rather, let's say zoom in. So we want to zoom in. The first thing we have to notice, okay, at what point do we want to start to zoom in? Do we want it at the beginning of the clip? Do we want it halfway through the clip? Do we want it at the end of the clip? So I'm going to start the zoom in at 2 seconds. So on my 2-second mark, that's where the zoom is going to start. So, okay, I'm at my 2-second mark. So now let's set our keyframe with scale, which is zoom, and let's make our keyframe. Boom. Okay, so we know at 2 seconds, the scale is at 98. Now, where do we want the zoom to stop? Well, okay, I want it to stop at 10 seconds. So I'm going to go to my 10-second mark. Okay, so now what should the scale be? Well, now let's zoom in to 200. So what I just did was I let Premiere know, okay, from the 2-second mark to the 10-second mark, I want to scale this video to 200%. So these are our points to indicate that. This is the point at the end where it's 200. And then this is the part at the beginning where it's 98 or 100. So as we scrub through, we can see it getting closer and closer. And we can even see it in real time with this bar. We're not even touching it. We see it because we made keyframes. We made points in our clip to let Premiere know this is the animation at this point in time. And you can make unlimited keyframes. So if you want to zoom in, zoom out, zoom in, zoom out, you can. Uh, you know, but just keep in mind how it works in terms of time. And this is one of those things that is completely new to maybe a lot of people. So, the best way to do this, like anything, to just practice it, see what it does and like how it makes sense. Because when I was being taught this kind of or explained this, I didn't really understand what the concept of keyframes meant until I actually started using it. And I'm like, okay, I see now it's really easy to use once I started to understand what it does. So again, keyframes are just points that you make to indicate motion of some sort. So let's do another example. So let's scale this back out to 100. So let's do opacity this time, which would be easier to see. And like again, opacity is visibility. So 100% opacity means you can see the whole video. 0%, you can't see anything. 50% means you can see half. It's half invisible, or you can see through half of it. So let's make a keyframe to fade in. So how it starts off black and then opens into the shot. Let's create that using keyframes. So again, we know our opacity is the thing that makes our video visible or not. So that's what we're gonna create our keyframe with opacity. So how we start this? Okay, so like I said, we want to start black and fade into the shot. So to achieve that, again, keyframe. So let's make our first keyframe. We want to tell CapCut at the beginning of this clip, it should be black because we're fading in. So at the beginning, it should be black. So let's make our keyframe here. Let's turn our opacity to 0. So it's black, but no, it's black throughout the whole video. Like I said, I wanted it to fade in, but we don't see a fade in. Well, that's because we only have that one keyframe. If we want to fade in, we have to make another keyframe to let CapCut know this is the part we want to, make it visible. So again, I'm at the beginning of the clip. It's 0% opacity, but where I wanted to start blending in. Okay, let's do it at the 2-second mark. So at the 2-second mark, we want the shot to completely come in. So now I'm increasing my opacity to 100, and then made another keyframe. So from 0 seconds to 2 seconds, it should fade in from black to the full picture with these two clips. So let's see. And it did it. That was the fade in, that smooth fade in. That's essentially what it is. So if you ever see like movies and they come in, well, let me take off something. Okay. So see how it starts off black and we get that smooth intro to fade in. That's a fade in. That's how fade ins are made. It's keyframe. So you see them in movies or TV shows, how they start black and then come in. That's made through keyframes. So that's how those fade in transitions are made. You're starting off black and then you're coming in to 100. So let's say we want to fade out. Let's say we want to start in and then fade to black. Well, same idea. Let's delete these. So that means let's choose our point where we want the shot to start to fade out. So maybe I want it to fade out at 15 seconds. So I'm at the 15-second mark. We can see it here. So our opacity is 100, right? That's the video, but we want it to fade black. So let's make our first keyframe with 100% opacity, meaning 100% visibility. And then we want to fade to black. So that means we have to go to the end of the clip and change the opacity to 0. And it made another keyframe. So this should fade out. like that. And we can see it right here at the opacity too. If we play it, we can see how it does it in time. And that's how fade outs are made, how they fade to black. That's how it's made through keyframes. You're starting off with the full picture and then ending it off with a black shot. You're decreasing the opacity, you're decreasing the visibility over time. And if you move these keyframes through the clip, the speed changes of how fast or how slow it fades to black. So the closer we get to the end of the frame, the faster it fades to black. But if we spread it out, it's going to be much slower. So just you can see it like this. We see it getting darker and less because we spread it out. So it takes a longer amount of time to reach that second keyframe. And so you can do this with all effects or anything basically in here. And so that's how you create animation and emotion and transition, those keyframes, which is a crucial part to video editing because those are points that indicate motion. So again, it may seem complicated or confusing, but you have to try it out and see how it plays out when you're actually editing a video. Um, let's see if we can find a clear definition. The keyframe is the process indicating the beginning and end of a specific animation and allowing your program to film the transition between these 2 points. This filling in creates the illusion of continuity between the still image of each keyframe marker. When we go back to CapCut, take our keyframes away. Let's see how this plays in with another effect. So let's try some color. With color, you could do some interesting things. So let's say, what if we went from black and white to color in the same shot, or color to black and white in the same shot? The only way to achieve that is through keyframes if you want to switch the color. So let's say, take this off. Okay. So first we have to indicate what effect allows us to change colors of a video. So that is color correction. That's the adjust tab. So if you go to video, or if you just see the screen, click your clip, go to adjustments, scroll down, and then this is how you change the color of your shots. But like I said, I want to go from black and white to color, or color to black and white. Let's do color to black and white. So to do that, make your first keyframe. So this we'll be playing with saturation because that would turn something from color to monochromatic or black and white. That's the saturation. So the higher we go on our saturation, the more vibrant the colors. The lower we go at saturation, it takes the colors away and you get that black and white. So we know saturation is what we're going to use for our keyframes. That's what we're going to. So we're going to only stay with this tab here, saturation. So like I said, we're going to do color and then go to black and white. So if we want to do that, we have to start at the beginning of our clip and let Premiere know, okay, this is the start of this effect or transition. So we want to make our first keyframe. And this is the first thing we'll see. Now, when do we want it to transition to start transitioning to black and white? Well, maybe we can do that at the 5-second mark. So we go to our 5-second mark, we've indicated where we want the effect to start, and we indicated where we want the effect to end. So we want it to start at the beginning, 0, 0, and then we want it to end at 5 seconds. So we made our first keyframe already. Now we're at 5, let's go to 5 seconds. Or close to 5 seconds. And let's make our second keyframe, but this time reducing the saturation. So all you have to do is just reduce the saturation and it automatically makes a keyframe for you because you've already told Premiere that we're using this as a keyframe. So you don't have to keep pressing this diamond. You can just keep adjusting it and it'll make keyframes for you. So if we play this back, it should go from color to black and white within 5 seconds. Black and white. And let's say we want to go to color again. Well, now we're going to have to add 2 more keyframes. So we have our first set, which goes from color to black and white. But what if we want to get back to color again? Well, okay, we have our black and white. So let's indicate where we want our color to come back in. So let's have our color come back in at the 10-second mark right here. Okay, so now let's just bring this back to 0. And that should do it. So let's see. So it should go from color to black and white to color again. Color, black and white, now color again. And there you go. And I did that using the keyframe technique. I just made 3 points and I let Premiere know at this point it should be all the way colored, or at this point it should be all the way black and white. So it's just telling the software where to make the changes in your clip. That's it. And we could do this with, like I said, any adjustment, most of them, like 90%. So we can use color, contrast. So let's do something else. Let's see. What if we change the exposure? So let's say we went to regular to super exposed. So right now it's neutral exposed, right? Nothing's too bright, nothing's too dark. But we want to increase our exposure. So let's say we want to make it all the way bright and give it like a bright effect if we wanted to. Again, we got to make our keyframe. So let's indicate where we want it to start. Want to start at the beginning of the clip. Okay, got my first keyframe at the beginning because that's where I want to start it. Where do I want it to end and get to that effect? Okay, let's say the 5-second mark. Now we got our endpoint. All we have to do is just move this because we've already indicated that it enabled a keyframe. So all we have to do is move that up. So that means from 0 seconds to 5 seconds, the exposure should increase. It should get brighter within the 5 seconds because that's the point in time we set our effect to be. And you can even see it increasing here. Now we get super bright and we get that exposure. And if we want to bring it back down, all we got to do is figure out where we want to bring it back down. Let's say here, and then you can darken it. So it should go from normal to super exposed to super underexposed. So right now it's normal, then it's getting exposed. Okay, super exposed. Now we're decreasing it. Now it's underexposed. And that's how that works. And so that's the importance of keyframes. It allows you to add motion and animation to whatever you want, whether that's the color, the lighting, the size, the rotation. You can just also works with text. So if you have like a movie credits, how they make movie credits scroll, at the end of a movie, that's the keyframe. They're telling the clip, they're telling the titles and all that to go up as time increases. You're scrolling down the credit scene. So that's why when you see like stuff move across the screen. So let's do another example. Let's do text this time. Let's have words move. Let's see how that works. So first thing, again, if you start anything and you need text, just click text, grab this and just drag it. And then you can extend it if you want it, depending on how much you want it to take over the clip. So let's say we want this to say just like motion, I guess, just for the sake of example. And let's change the font. Increase this. They have some pre-made fonts, but I don't know. We'll use this. Okay. So what do we want this motion thing to do? So let's have it slide onto the screen. So from left to right, let's have it slide in. So how will we achieve that? So first thing we gotta do is click our motion layer. So we know, okay, we're editing the motion of the text, not the video. So notice I have two layers. I have one for my motion text, and then I have a second layer for my video. So you want to make sure you're clicking the right thing to edit. Because if I'm editing the text, but I actually click the video, I'll actually be editing the video. So you want to make sure you're clicking the right layer that you want to edit. So I'm editing the text, so I'm gonna click my text layer. Cool, select it. Now, how do we get it to move? What would that fall under? Would that fall under scale, rotation, position? Well, it would fall under position because it lets us know direction. So our X and our Y. So they should have, I wish they had a slider to make it easier. We're doing it like this, but let's just do negative 100 and see where that goes. Okay, so maybe we need to do negative 1000 or negative 900. Still not enough. So probably got to do. So we needed enough for it to get off the screen completely. So I'll do negative 2000. That should work. Okay. That didn't. So let's say negative 5000. Great. It's off. So let's make, so we know, okay, so let me backtrack. So we have our text. And like I said, we wanted to go from left to right. So from the outside of the screen to slide in. So we wanted essentially to do this, slide in smoothly like that. That's what we want. Coming from out the frame into the frame center. That's what we want to achieve. So to do that, again, you have to go to make your first keyframe at the beginning, right? Indicate where you want it to start. Like I said, we want it to start off screen. So how will we get it off screen? Well, you could do one or two things. You can make your keyframe first, or you can make your position, then your keyframe. Up to you. It doesn't matter, but as long as this keyframe is selected, whether it's before or after. So I'll make the keyframe first. So I'll press this right here to indicate, okay, we started our keyframe in the position tab, because that's what we're going to be editing, the position, not the scale, not the rotation, but the position, which is the X and Y. So I made my keyframe to let Premiere know, okay, this is an animation, this is a motion. Once you click a keyframe tab, you're letting CapCut know this is about to be an animation. So they already know, okay, he like this person is gonna make an animation, so let's just keep the keyframes on. So like I said, I want this to start from the left and slide in. So I've already enabled the keyframe. So I'm gonna do is just slide out the frame. And it's already made a keyframe for us. We can kind of see it here, but again, I already enabled it. So we know it's there. So when do we want it to slide in the center? So let's say at 3 seconds, we want it to come back to the center. So for that to happen, we would have to change our X. So right now it's in the negative because it's off frame, but let's bring it back in frame. So let's do it, let's say 900, see where it gets. So that's too far to the right. So maybe 600 or maybe 300. Still kind of off, maybe 100. That look good. So we know it goes from here to 100, well, from here to, 100 in the X position in 3 seconds. So if we play this back, it should slide in to the center within 3 seconds, which it did. And we can see it if we slow it down too. And when it gets to 3 seconds, it should stop, which it did. And there you go. So that's how they're able to make things slide from on and off screen. Let's do another example. So this time, let's have it grow. So let's have it do this. Boom, and then come in like that. Let's have that be the motion. So we know that's scale. So we already see it. So we know this is the keyframe we're going to enable. So let's say at the beginning of the clip, where do we want it to start? We want it to start maybe at 0 because we don't want to see it. So let's make our first keyframe. Well, you can't go to 0, but let's say 1. So we made our first keyframe at 1. Great. Let's move this over. When do we want it to grow in size? Let's say at the 6-second mark. So we have our beginning point. Where's our end point? 6 seconds. So let's make, we don't even have to make another keyframe. Like I said, you could just scale now because we've already enabled it and it will automatically make a keyframe for you. So let's say we want it to be like this. So that means from the beginning of the clip to 6 seconds in the clip, it should grow in that motion. Boom. And it's there. So that's the power of keyframes. It allows you to create animations, emotions with text, video, images, anything. Yeah. So let's see. And the cool thing is you can also change the color. You can add other keyframes on top of that one. So let's say I want this to grow, but I also want the color to change. So that's 2 animations in one text, in one layer. So the first animation is that having it grow like this, the motion text, having it grow like this. The second animation would be the changing the color. So let's say it goes from orange to, let's say, blue. So to do that, we already have our motion for the scale, but let's do the same thing, but with the color. So let's make our starting point. Okay, at the beginning of the clip, we want it to be orange. But when we get to the final point, what color we want it to be. I already made our keyframe, so all we have to do is just change the color. So like I said, blue. So basically, it should go from orange to blue in 6 seconds and grow at the same time. Let's see if it does it. And it did it. So we grew, not only did the text grow, it also changed colors. And that's what you want. And so, and yeah, that's keyframes for you. We'll go deeper into it for the next class, but I wanted to just show a little brief overview of what keyframe is and what it does and the power of it and the effect of it, because it's extremely important parts of video editing. It's the only way to create animation and motion. So yeah, powerful. Um, yeah. So let's move to so there's a few things that, like I said, keyframing allows you to do. This is how animation is made. So like animation software, they basically are making a bunch of keyframes to let the software know, okay, at this point, this should be here, 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 here. So animation, they use it all the time. Yeah. So let me, I'm gonna show this one because he's just talking. yeah, I thought I had a video where it just showed the type of stuff that you can do with keyframing, but it's not here anymore. But okay. Um, but yeah, that's a quick brief overview on keyframing. Uh, I thought I had this video to show, but it's not here anymore. I don't know why they took it down. But yeah, I'll just finish the class off with this clip. So in films, you've probably seen something called the repeat cut, which basically is when you do the same cut and do it twice, maybe from different angles, different perspectives. But I might save this video. Kind of want to save it. Yeah, I'll save it, but okay, we'll save that. For now, I'll play this video. Um, so this video says 3 mistakes all beginner editors make. I think I'll just play this. I think it's a cool video. Give you something to think about.
Familiar with these mistakes because I was once guilty of making them. It is a that's probably the best. You don't know what you have, what's good, from yours. This process also comments seem to pre-like the video. I am going all that the video. It's as if the cutscenes disappear. Conversation take place. The catalyst that was
Here's my advice. Support all the way the chain. Push shots. Support. Safety on. Just build them all. But the things, victory is the score is not. The problem. And how it sound all the way to the end product. Where you see. So as you snap.
Yeah, so those were just some tips that I think are good for editing, um, and to keep in mind. But again, uh, the best way is to just practice, just practice. So, uh, but yeah, that's pretty much all I have for today. Um, and yeah, next week we'll go more into CapCut, um, and talk about other things you can do. There's a lot, but yeah, we'll cover that and move forward from there.
Oh, who's hello?
Hey, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
All right. So I guess you're gonna miss part of the well, you're gonna miss the that meeting we had with the marketing team. But they're gonna record it and I can send you the recording.
It said it was I missed it or I am going to miss it.
Oh, you are going to miss it because your class is going on now. Unless there's a way Ty can record your class and you attend that meeting if you want.
Oh, well, what you mean record my class?
For today. Do you want Ty to put something else in place of your class today and
Oh, yeah, that's fine. I think that'll probably be a better use of my time.
okay, yeah.
It looked like it wasn't on the schedule though.
I got a oh, you know what? My phone gave me a warning. I haven't even looked at the I'm typing out a letter right now. But I'm let me let you know in about a few minutes. Can you Ty, are you on? I think he's just recording.
Yeah,
Ty?
likely. It looks like the meeting well, whatever was on my schedule at 6, it said it's canceled.
Oh, okay. Let me find out. Um let me see what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Oh shucks, I just clicked the wrong button
Uh-oh.
for this meeting. Let me see. I should be able to look at it on my calendar and get it though. Today is the 30th.
So how are we streaming? How does this work?
Um, you know what? It'd be good if you can get on this because I just we let the organizer know you're waiting. Okay, it is a meeting going on right now. So let
No.
me guys, can you send Elaine
The link.
for this meeting?
I'm on chat.
Here's Anthony right now. For sure.
Yeah, Anthony, can you send Elaine the link to the meeting? Okay, thanks. Elaine, I'm gonna send text Ty now. Ask him.
Is this being how is it being streamed? So what happens, what we're doing on here for the 4 hours is streaming the whole 4 hours? Is that what happens?
Yeah, that's what's supposed to happen, but that's why
Okay.
that's why I want you to be on the marketing, so we can talk about that, so you can know the logistics. Okay, I sent this. I sent it to Ty. You should be able to sign into the marketing meeting now. I think Anthony has sent you a link.
Did he?
Have you sent Elaine the link, Anthony?
I'm about to send an email right now.
He's gonna send you an email right now.
Okay. Or he can send it in the chat.
Huh?
Okay.
Okay. I'm trying to finish up a letter, guys. I just got a couple of sentences and then I'll be on talking with you guys. Okay. So you can start without me if you want. But you know what? Wait till Elaine gets on. Just okay. He just sent it out to you, Elaine.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Now I gotta go find my email. Hold on.
You don't have what time?
What is that? Jeez.
Hey guys, Ty said he doesn't have the link for the marketing meeting.
Yeah, I'll send it to you as well right now.
Okay. Anthony said he's gonna send it to you right.
What? Can you send it to my chat? I have to go out and log back in. It's on my phone, but it's not on my computer. Let's see. That's fine. Thanks, guys.
Go to your dashboard homepage. You can skip a lot of these pages because you already have Streamlabs downloaded, of course. But one page you don't want to skip here is the tipping. Oops, which help you. What's her name? You're going to set. What? Work games, which I think is pretty beginner friendly, and it's just the basis is always to start off with foundation. Right.
loops which help you not right. So other weeks go by smoother because all the concepts build off one another. Uh, so the basis is always to start off with the foundation, right? Right. So you know what Python is? Have you ever coded in Python before? What's her name? Okay, Nelma. I'm saying. So Python is a very powerful, pretty beginner friendly, and it's just like a programming language that you're able to do a lot of things in. Um, Building applications, creating automations, building games, which for games is not as popular, but you can build some pretty introductory games, which is what we're going to be doing at the end of the course. All right. Uh, and the reason why a lot of people tend to choose Python over some other coding languages to pick up first is just because of the fact that the syntax is pretty easy compared to some others. For example, Java, there's a lot of things that you have to worry about, such as syntax, which is you have to include a bunch of different words before you can actually make the code run. And in Python, you don't have to do that. All you have to do is just, it's kind of like typing in English, uh, but it's very logical, right? So some of the reasons why Python is going to be really good is because one, it's always going to be in demand. It's good for flexibility, good for just having a good community because you can ask any question on Python and people are always going to have the answers to it, right? Like anything that you've probably struggled with, many people have also struggled with. Uh, so it's really easy to always get help, which is a really good part because coding takes time, right? And the best thing of all is it's creative. It lets you kind of do whatever you want and then just like formulate from there and choose your own path, right? So starting off with some basic terms, right? In Python, we have variables which store information, right? Generally speaking, you'll call them or set them as a name of something that you want to use. For example, chair is equal to, and then whatever the data value is, right? All of those variables are encapsulated within certain data types, right? For example, you have different numbers, which just like in real life, you also have floating points, which are numbers with variables, or numbers with decimal points, and then integers, which can be positive or negative. Same thing with floating points or floats, right? So you have floats, ints, strings, which is just your way of being able to define words. And the way you would do that is by using quotation marks. And then last but not least, there's booleans, which represent true and false values, right? Those are going to be used for kind of like on and off switches, for telling your code kind of when to keep going, when not to keep going. You're not going to use those too much for the first couple of weeks, but they do come in handy, right? You can use them to perform simple operations such as like calculations, manipulate data using all the normal math equations. You can also use it to express different things. So you can combine variables, you can manipulate those variables, you can use those operators to create whole other things. You can reassign those same variables, and it just makes it's essentially working within itself, right? And then some more basic thing is just input and output of what you give in versus what you get out is always going to be something, right? So you could always ask the user to give you some piece of information and then you use that information, which is what we're going to be doing. I think if we have some time today, uh, which we should be able to, right?
Oh,
Don't worry about this too much. This is coming up in the upcoming weeks. But there's conditional statements, which is the computer's way for it to make decisions. Loops, which help you not have to write the same thing out like 500 times for code. Functions, which are probably one of the most important things because they're what you use to define a certain block of code. And then modules, which help you execute some of that code because you don't have to rewrite everything from scratch. People have done it for you, so you might as well use those things, right? So to get started, on your laptops, go ahead and open up VS Code. And I will help you out. So now you're gonna choose your own theme. Yeah, essentially whatever you feel is best. Honestly, I would say stick to darker color themes because for some light or just dim light. That's just me as a programmer, but yeah. And keep reading, yeah, I use dark. Okay. Yep, then just continue that, mark it up, and next section. Funnel. Yep. So most important part. Yep. So I would say first things first, to get started, I would actually go into your files folder or go into the desktop and then create a folder called Python.
Oh Lord. I already know this is gonna get.
The problem with your doc sorted out is or desktop folders. They type okay. Your eyes on both. And then you give them that's it. Okay. Now for that's that attachments. File. Open. That's open. Desktop. Inside. And then I would also do like here. And then do like test.py. Test. Whatever you want to make, right? The .py is the .python extension. So in a folder here, now you're gonna want to open up that folder. So file.
This is gonna be fun.
Open Python. Select.
Suck.
And then you right click on that. Okay, right here. On the cover, just play the new file here. Yeah. And then name it like test.py or something. First.py. Test.py. Yeah. And then enter. Okay. Now we're gonna get some extensions on your guys' computer. So that way it just makes VS Code a little bit easier to run. Right? So on the left-hand side, all the way on the left, look for one that has like 4 little boxes, and that's your extensions. Python function. Type. Yep. Type. Python. Stop Python. Stop. Yeah. So you could just stop. Yeah, no, it's installed. You can do Python. So you have to have and then go back to this here that it's like program processing. I guess it's just hard. I'm not really installed. I thought my system and then yeah, it's done. We're gonna go to extension settings. You just go all the way down. Okay, so select this one. Save on for. And then save on for. That way, that makes sense to saving. Goes that back to it. Everything. It's not that. Anything else like that? Well, I have more extensions as yeah. Production. Sorry, correct. Which we already have installed. Right. So, just want to go back to the chicken. Normally it always offers a great
So all here, you go back here, hold them all the file that you're asking. Okay, so each game is going to just get a color. So now you can just close these little tabs out. Space and home for home. And then go back to this now if you want. Oh, okay, it's what I'm writing on for you. Figure it out, cool. So basically, each time, make sure that so yeah, I type. Okay. Right. So growth equals to you'll run it. Right. So stuff is challenging. One thing we should use is this is single. But and it's just one problem is stuff like that. Separating something. Usually, there's a research teach you how old is going on. Which one was the message goes that one?
Oh, that's fine. Okay. Then you Python.
Microsoft Store?
Yeah. There was only one case where I used Python and it didn't. It was better for me to not use it from the Microsoft Store. Because for some reason that one has its limitations. Okay, so now we'll just let that download.
So you should I don't know why can from store not for me. Some
Yeah, I don't know why it doesn't work. Honestly, I always tend to do it from online because for some reason doing it from online gives you better conditions.
right.
But I know that sometimes it's a pain. It took me a while for me to set up that way.
For some reason, so
Has it downloaded yet?
yeah, it's down. So for some reason, it I don't the buggy. For high school, it's detect that sometimes we have to like
Class.
close it out. And then, once you
So now, see how it works.
but
Means they're all good. On the Python side. So
that's what I'm push it right here. So basically, what we're doing is we're kind of creating like
Yeah.
paper. So I'm gonna tell you what to say, not exactly doing it's essential. It's telling us, hey, great, hello world, it's gonna create out hello world. The calculator, you're gonna basically kind of give it, basically kind of feeding it information to relate back to the
Okay, so now let's try that. Here's footprint. Space. No, actually for Python, you do that. So do shift I. Oh, and then it autofills. Then do shift quotations.
Should we go on a ship?
Yep, shift this one. Okay. You're gonna be using the shift.
Okay.
And then hello. Space. And then click the play button. And perfect. You guys are all set up. So now that works perfectly on your side of things. Here. Okay, so do first lab, but not the lab. Okay, so in Python, we're gonna kind of denote things as follows. I don't know why I still don't have the intro.py. Yes. So strings are always going to be denoted using quotations. So you do shift and then use the quotations to get to it. An example of it is if you just start typing the word like word, right? It's not going to come up. But if you do shift this, and then do word. You notice how it turned?
Focus on that class.
That's a good sign because that means it's reading as a string, right? Strings don't always necessarily have to be words, but it's essentially text, right? It could be numbers, it could be anything. Like I could do this true, I could do 2 plus 2, all right? I could do all of them. But this information isn't really being saved, right? So if I wanted to save it, I would probably have to call it as a variable. So I could do something like 4 is equal to this. If I were to run the program, nothing is going to happen though, because we're not really displaying anything. So what you would want to do is do print 4. And now if I were to run it, it'll give you just a 2 plus 2. Make sense so far? Any questions?
Can we try that?
Yeah.
Okay, how do I go down?
So for creating new lines, you hit enter.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
So I would say this: the 3 most important keys that you're going to be using are always going to be enter, tab, and shift, right? Here, actually, I'll probably write this down. So whenever you're going to be calling something, for example, like a function for like print, you always have to do parentheses around it to denote exactly what it's doing. Same thing with functions and stuff like that. For variables, you do equal to store the value as 1. That's not the same thing as setting it equal to something. That's just saying I want this value to be something, right? So it's kind of, it's keeping it in the memory. Let's see. And then floats are, strings are the only way that you really do this, where quotations around it. Depending on what you're doing, you're either going to be working a lot with strings or not too much with it. Next, we're going to be talking more about the number side of things, and then that's probably what I'll have you guys work on first, so that way you can kind of get started. So on the number side of things, just like in real life, you have floats, which are numbers that aren't integers. So a floating point number would probably be something like this, right? 2.3 is classified a float, so here actually I'll number is equal to 2.3, right? You can add however many digits you want. This is considered a float or a floating point number. Next, you have integers, which are just whole numbers. So something like 10, integer. Something like 2, integer. So if I were to introduce some other things, just know just know that generally speaking, you can change data types, right? So I can have 2, and this is a integer, it's an int. But if I wanted to turn it into a float, I could actually just call float, parentheses around it, and it'll turn it into a float. So if I were to run this code, what do you think it would be displayed? What do you think is going to be printed in the terminal, which is this area?
Wait. Print number. Wait, see, number equals float 2.
What's a floating point number?
Actually, Sammy, I just came by to follow up on the question you just asked.
Yep. Wait, what you say, Elijah?
Well, I came by to come back to see. I tried to see I tried to see what the questions that you just asked.
Oh yeah, I just said if I were to change 2, right? I were to change its typing, what would its new type be? And what would the output be? And as Ty said, it would be 2.0 because that's the easiest way that you can turn a regular number into a floating point, right? You add just a 0.0.
So is there 0.0? You can do that?
Yep. Yep. So let's just say now I could do an int of a floating point number. So we could do int of 3.14159, right? And then if I were to take just the integer of this, what would it be? Yep.
You have to know now.
Not really. Just know that, yeah, integer is just taking off whatever, but it's not the same thing as rounding. So you can have 3.99 and then int will just take the 3.
So a float's a decimal and a whole number is.
Int. Yep. Honestly, int is probably the easiest one to explain. The trickier one is float.
So by default, Python do integers or floating point numbers if you do the operation.
It kind of all depends on the typing, right? So I would say generally speaking, though, it tends to do more things in floats, unless you specify otherwise. But if it sees that you're doing things as integers, it just sticks with it, right? You also have something called the round function, right? So you can round things in Python. You can multiply things, right? So this is an interesting interaction that we're going to witness. So if I were to do 2 plus 2, and I were to print it out as a number, what do you think is going to get printed out? Why isn't it going to be 2 plus 2?
When I was trying to divide before when we were doing the numbers, I did 5 and 5 became out of 10 when I printed.
Yep.
Why I don't.
So it's because you're essentially telling it to do something, and it's reading that operation. So it says, I know that you want to do 2 plus 2, which I'll save that information as 4 because that's the same thing. But if I wanted to just save it as 2 plus 2, I'd have to make it as a string.
So I was missing my quotations earlier. Okay.
Yep.
That makes sense.
Okay, so where would you see the 4? Like,
So, yep, if you were to run it,
beautifully.
yep,
It's gonna bring. So basically what you're telling me, say, okay,
save the information.
yeah, I want to do this. And it's gonna say, okay, you're doing addition. Let's say the two, and 4.
Yep. Likewise, you can do the same thing with subtraction and multiplication. So if I were to do 2 minus 2, right? 2 minus 2, that'll give me 0. If I were to do 4 minus 2, that'll give me 2. And it's always going to stay within the same type, right? So I'm always going to be, if I'm doing float minus float, it's going to stay as a float. If I do integer minus integer, it's going to stay as an integer, right? So what if I were to do 3.14 minus 2.14? Right, so I'm taking away 2 floats, but technically, it could be simplified as an integer. Do you think it's going to automatically do the switch?
Say it again?
So let's just say I have 2 floating point numbers, 3.14, and then I'm subtracting it from another floating point number, 2.14. What's that?
That's like it's.
It's gonna give us what?
Close. It's not.
1.0.
Yep, it's going to give us 1.0. Right?
Because it's called so I want to switch. I want to see each other.
Exactly. There's only one exception to this, and that's going to be in when we're dividing. It's because that has a special case for why it switches. So let's do 4 divided by 2. Right? Do you think naturally you think that because we're dividing it, it stay as a int, right? But let's run it, and it's going to give us a float. The reasoning being, when you divide things, generally speaking, you're always having some sort of decimal, right? So if I were to do 5 divided by 3, or 5 divided by 2, right? It reads and it says, okay, I know that there should be something after the 0, so I'll just make it as a placeholder.
5 into whole number. Write it as 0 to represent it having no remainder.
Exactly. So it always tries to figure out, is there going to be a remainder, is there not? And the only way to combat this is really just to do int of 4 divided by 2, 5 divided by 2, whatever you want to do, to get it back to exactly, right? This isn't going to be what we're going to be doing per se, but it is going to be useful later on in the road, right? There's other math things that you could do. For example, to do exponents, you do 2 multiplication, which is the time sign, multiplication, and then whatever number you're going to raise it to the power to. So if I were to say 2 to the power of 3, I'd have to do 2 multiply 3, which is saying, let me take 2 and multiply it by itself 3 times, right? And that's 8. Any questions so far? Do you guys think that you'd be ready for a basic lab to try to guys, get you started trying to work things out really quick? Okay, so are you guys in Microsoft Teams or do you guys have like your own personal Gmails?
Email.
Okay, here, let me do that. What's your Gmail?
Jaden. KF. JYDN. 2407 at gmail.com.
Yep, and then yours?
NONWMAH@gmail.com.
So I would say that this is probably the easiest way to share file.
Yeah.
But not this one. Oh. Okay, it's all right. We'll just delete this. Yep, that's search this. I forgot to
I still have to first.
yeah, here. Okay, so I'll go back. I'm gonna just resend it so that way it'll work from actual 0. Okay, so now go into your Gmail accounts.
It could have been. It is like across. It's like across the street. Yeah, later. No. What? It's like food bars. It's like it's like a turning bar. Yeah, it's when they sleep.
All I know is the photo up there. Oh,
And that's how you do something. Yeah.
so that's still my time. Keep the bottles. That's my go-to every single time I'm like, okay, so or my bad. By the time we reach our next house, hands down. Obama's still a hit. Okay, so download the second. Good. Just click download. And then do you know how to put things into your folders? Yeah, so I would say Careful. Cookie. Okay.
Want to do
Now go over.
let's say. Now,
And then I want to do the copy or just move it into whatever folder. Copy. Just left click. That's right click.
oh, that okay.
Yep. And then drag.
Oh,
And then
Oh,
Yeah.
when you look around and
Python folder.
yes, we can.
it's in.
Yep. And then drag it and drop it. Look. Go back to this one. Yes. And now click on the first laptop one. What about this?
This one? Oh, okay.
And now it's off. It's good.
There. Oh.
Oh no, I'm gonna do it that way. But anyways, that didn't make it easier. Yeah. So I was get started on it, try to figure it out. The first one, the instructions are up there. I think you should be able to figure it out. I would say if you need help with the round function, just let me know. But yeah, I'll give you a couple minutes. Go on and get started on that. Sure. Jackie goes tough though.
Oh, yeah. Did you get your merch yet? Oh, yeah, you gotta ask her.
Without the mess.
How's Scott working?
Nah, dude, I've seen the ones that do like the auto tracking.
Yeah, this one is supposed to, I just think I haven't set it up. I think this one's supposed to have the audio.
Then where as soon as it detects audio, it just swivels to wherever it wants,
Yeah.
and then it centers you, or it centers the two people that it's like if it hears more than one, it'll center it in the middle of both of them.
Yeah, that's dope.
I was like, dang. Elijah, you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Do you remember doing this lab?
Wait, so, wait, this lab right here? Wait.
Yep.
Oh, right. Wait a second. Problem 3,
Here.
area of a triangle. Oh, wait. Why does mine say, wait a second.
Yeah, let me
Just
also
send me
send it
one
to
of
you
those-
in case.
Wait, do I find it in my Gmail?
Yeah, I would say just check your Gmail. I just sent it to you again. And then I would say download it and then work on it from your end, and then we'll go over it as well. Just in case that use this as a review.
Oh, I see it.
Yep. Here. So I would say just go ahead and get started on it.
Okay.
I would say start off with question 1. Where I've given you the liquid weight, so all you have to do is just do some calculations on it and then try to perform it.
Look, about what I was going off during the last class. Well, I felt like for some reason I felt.
So your answer is under decline 10. So either on 11 or 12.
Okay.
Oh, I see it. Now I see. Yes, lab. All right. All right. So,
Yes. My answer has to be here and be here.
Yeah, no, so if you type it in there, this is just like the just so I would say
In the right section.
kind of.
wait.
I would say
Look up
use
the
the variable.
molecular
So
weight of hydrogen,
the very-
carbon, and oxygen.
Yeah.
Calculate the weight of a carbohydrate.
Right. So I would say
22H12C
the
and
variable
11O.
for carbohydrate.
And rounded
Right.
to 3 decimal
Say,
places,
Just
answers
look
should
at
be
what
in
the
grades.
carbohydrate needs exactly, and then use that to your advantage. You're probably gonna have to use some math things. I would say probably multiplication. I would say at the end is when you don't worry about the rounding function, just figure out the first part. And I don't think you need you don't need to declare it need a type.
Man, rounding is the trickiest part for me.
Exactly. I just keep right.
And wait, did you say don't worry about it for the first part?
Don't I put it in myself?
Oh no. So all of these are already given. I would say
What am I doing?
okay, so the first thing I would say create a new variable for carbohydrate and then try to figure out what that variable should be using what we given, right? So we know the weight of it, and then I would say try to figure out a way to get this into the new variable. And then from there I'll show you.
And okay.
Okay, so let's label it.
Okay, no one more. The hydrant. What do you want?
So I'll first do this. It's equal to. And then we see that the weight of the pipe is like so. Well, not
It's hydrant, right?
22H, right? So what the 22H means? 20, H stands for hydrogen.
I mean, okay.
So we need 22 copies of hydrogen. So what we know that one copy of hydrogen is here. So with 22, what is it?
It's like saying,
So I got the 22 times, and then
tonight.
no, sorry. 2 times measure, right? Now I would also do plus, and then C stands for carbon. So what do you think complex?
12.
12. Yeah. And then with, and then C. Okay. So you finish that part? Okay. Now here. Jenna, let me know when you finish that part. You're all good? Okay. So
Wait, for some reason, wait. Sammy, did you say don't worry about the first part about rounding? Rounding to 3 decimal places. Rounding's the trickiest.
No, it's okay. We'll get to it. Don't worry about it too much right now. So first, what we're gonna need to do is right. So you always want to start off by labeling your variables. So in our case, our variables carbs or carbohydrates, which are 22 hydrogen plus 12 carbon
Wait, 22
plus
hydro. That's 12.
11 oxygen, right? Now we want to round it. So we can either do this two ways. I would always just break it down as simple as possible. So I would actually do carb is equal to round and then this. From here, let me know when you guys have it, and then we'll walk through how it works. Okay. So one of the reasons why I love VS Code compared to some other software editors is because when you hover over something, it'll kind of tell you what it is and give you a little bit more information. For example, if you just hover over round, it tells you it takes in two parameters. One of them being a number that you want to round, and two being the digits that you want to round to. So in our case, we know that we want to round the number of whatever carb is, and then two, three digits, right? So we do carb, comma, 3. And then lastly, we print out number value of carb is, which is 324.293. Make sense? Any questions so far? Questions, Jaden? Okay. So that's the first part. I would say the second problem, break it up into the simplest things. So just in case we are unaware, all things always go x1 comma y1 for those, and then x2 comma y2. Right? I would just do this so that way it doesn't read it. So using that, I would say create some variables, set those variables equal to some number, and then at the end, just do square like distance. And then don't worry about the square root. We'll walk through that together. But at least I want to see if you guys can get the first part. This is all about creating variables, right? So take a second, go ahead. Nothing have the other method or in I mean what needs to do is for this opportunity to work. And that information will come where it won't use it especially. Like I was reading I was saying I think it's in play. And I'm pretty sure it's somewhere earlier in play because we have the GUI play. I'm pretty sure we might have some good later, or like text-based play, but I think we don't have regionals or like, mind play. Right, so figure out what you need to do that, so that way they just choose the random part of its game. Um, and then from there you can just like that, yeah, I think I can just get it. I'm the one who had in cards, so you never choose. Yeah, what can I do like to do like a player or go choose random player and I'll also try to class. Yeah. Okay. It's not doing. Huh?
I have no idea what
Okay, so you know what? This one right here. I would always say try to live with something. Whenever you use miracles, always trying to eventually develop a variable. Right? So we know that we have to like equipment comes for time file. So I would say, what's your X one in this case? So I would make the next one equals 10.
Okay, in this. There's a difference.
Just like this. That's what and then the integral level. That's 2 by 2.
Okay, that's true. I'm getting it now.
I got you. It takes time, trust me.
Yeah.
I was the same way. I was like, what the heck?
It takes you like it takes time to wrap your head around.
Sure. Was it? That's one way to like, yeah. Think so. Yes. I see.
Wait a second, Sammy. We're at the problem 2, right?
Yeah.
Wait. Okay.
Yep. Don't worry. I'll show up how it's done. Give me 1 second.
Okay.
So, try to you also with labeling some variables. So now when we're doing it, I would say, okay, labels of variables look the same way. So I would say, like, what's your x1? I would say x1 is equal to
X label, that's one X2.
x and out. But it's just a good exercise to practice it because technically that is right.
I can just come back in. It's formula.
Oh, also, wait, I just realized. Don't forget, that's not how you do exponents in Python.
So I ain't gonna be writing with the sound.
Yeah, you do the okay.
So
I was like, wait. Control Z. Yeah, control Z, control Z. Press delete the bill.
I didn't mean to, I just said right.
Oh yeah, okay, lost that. That was all right. Put up my signature. And this is. Picture. Do you remember how exponents go?
If
Yeah, that's 2 of those. Okay. So.
and then
And then we'll take 1 second. All right, Julian, you pretty much done? Yep. So, there's lots of different ways to do it, right? One way I would do it just to practice variables is x1 is equal to 10, all right, y1 is equal to 5, x2 is equal to 8, y2 is equal to 4. And then I would do x2 minus x1 raised to the 2. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna figure out the square root, right? And to do this, this is kind of dipping our toes a little bit into using modules and how they work. So to do a square root, all you would have to do is math dot square root and then put parentheses around what you want. So it's going to look something like this. And then we're going to print the distance.
Like he did like I didn't know.
A little bit. It was similar to our.
So should you do it this way or create versus be like doing
Everything all in one?
everything like all of mine?
Oh no, this I do it just as like an introductory step. I would always do everything all in one line.
You know, it's all of mine, but why does kind of it's okay. It's that maybe like easier to read.
Sometimes, yeah. Yeah, in case you ever wanted to change numbers and just figure out. So, for example, if I just know at some point I'm doing this, right? And I'm like, okay, so this is a comment where I'm like, midpoint of 2 points, right? But I ever wanted to just change it out and figure out, okay, now I'm moving over 10 points to the right using the second one, rather than having to go individually and manually change it. I could always rename the variable somewhere else. Or I could always just change it manually. But like let's just say x1 is now equal to 20. Now instead of it being 10 here, now it's gonna be 20.
So it makes it odd.
Yep.
Okay, so Mike says X1 is not defined.
Oh,
Oh,
that was just as an example.
okay.
Now I'll do I see one. Wait, don't forget that after the square root to put your parentheses.
Different?
Yep. So that's the parentheses for this. So parentheses over it to tell it what exactly.
Okay.
So now, now when I get. You can also run things using Control Alt and if it makes it easier to run away. It's also. And then getting other issues. So
It's easy, right?
yeah.
As we start.
Yeah, I think we have enough time where a lot of these other concepts like problem 3 and 4, you guys could probably do on your own time if you guys really wanted to. But I think we're good to move on to another set so that way we could get the ball rolling, keep moving on. All right. So yes. Okay. It's this one. So right now we're going to be talking a little bit more about inputs and outputs, where, right, so just reviewing mathematics, we don't need this because we just went over it. Variables. So an input. An input is something that you put into the computer or into the program that allows for it to run. That could include any different data types. But sometimes you also do need to prompt the user for some piece of information that it takes in as an input. In this case, we can actually use something called the input function, where you do input and then whatever you're going to want from the user. Generally speaking, you're going to want to put it in as some float, but you could always input something else, right? So input ints, floats, booleans, whatever. But 90% of the time, I would say always, for our purposes, just always use strings, because you're going to be wanting to get something specific from the user, right? So the way that you use it is always input, parentheses, quotations, and then whatever you want to ask. Make sense? Output is what's displayed by the program. So let's just say that it's 2 times 2. We know that we're getting 4, or we're taking their input and then mixing it around, doing something. Then we're getting that as the output, and that's what's being shown. No, you actually don't need to write output. Output is just something that happens naturally, right? Input is the only time that you'll really use it is for prompting users for something, right? So for example, if you're creating a form, right, that's probably like the most logical case where I see it being used. I would say input, what is your name? Input, right, what is your age? Input, where do you live, right? And then I would take all of that and then compile it. I would say add this information here, add this information here, add this information here. Create an account using first name dot last name at Gmail. And then I would say print, and that's our output statement. Or return, that's our output statement. Don't worry about return right now. Returns for when we get to functions, but I would say for now, just worry about print and then their output, their email address, or print whatever you just made. And then that's going to be shown. So it's like, thank you for registering. Here's your email address, or here's your account number. That's probably like the most accurate way of people using input, where they're like prompt the user, get some information, use that information somewhere, give them something different. Make sense? Along with this, now we're going to start talking about our first conditional statements. So if statements go like this: if some condition is true or false, do this, right? I think it's just going to be easier if I show you on the board. So normally it's going to go, and you can flip. There's a block. This.
So put on the beanie again. Wait. Oh.
Oh, yes, never mind. Wait, no, you should be able to erase that. That's yeah. Where's the line?
This?
That's a lot.
Nah, I was just looking at the handwriting. Of course she got nice handwriting. Why am I not surprised? I totally forgot that was there.
Yeah, but that's
Okay. So for if statements, the way that they're gonna work is you know some condition that you write happens, you do this, right? Right. So it's always like if for some condition, you're gonna want to do this. For example, if x is equal to 1, which double equals means if it's the exact same, print as a, right? And I use this because generally when you write if statements, you're always gonna be doing tab because it has to be indented. So anytime you see me do something like that, that's what it means. So yeah, the way that it's gonna work is if statements are like the first condition, then you have something called else if, which is pretty much the exact same thing as an if statement. It's just like the second part. So it's like you could use either an elif or an it after the if statement. It doesn't matter too much. So you could do either else or if, else if, which is called an elif, which is probably how you're going to see it in code. And then lastly, it follows the exact same formula for this one. Where you do else if some condition, do this, and then you also have else. And then for that one, you just do else and then some condition, right? So with that, it always makes it easier for you to kind of know what's happening, keep tabs, do all of that. And then like a basic intro to functions is works the same way, but you do def to sort of say define your function name and then whatever you want to give it. We won't dive too into it this time. We'll talk more about it next week whenever we actually get to the functions. But check your emails. Let me actually make sure that this time I did not. All right, sick. So for this one, I'm gonna do. Okay. Oh. Fuck. I'm saying file. I don't know what it says file. I would say go back to your emails, download the second part. For this one, what we're gonna be doing is coding like a magic 8 ball, which if you guys know how that like little thing works, right?
Like the, oh, the magic eight, oh, you shake it.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's like you just shake it, you ask it a question.
Yeah.
Oh, it's gonna happen for that.
Mm-hmm.
It's just random.
Right.
Yep.
That's not red.
Oh no. I'm in other plans on first.
You said just look at it, right?
Yep. So
Oh,
that one. And then I would say put in the same spot as the so I would say yep, downloads, I drive documents. Yep, documents and then to if I download it. Yep. There you go.
and then go back.
Yep. All right, now I'm just there you go. All right, is it ready, Jay? Okay. So for the lab, this one shouldn't be too hard. It's kind of gonna take what we did last time and then just do it. So you have these numbers here, and they're going to represent certain number outcomes that you're going to be checking on, right? So I would always say this is the only line of code that I gave to you because what it does is it just chooses a random number between 1 and 10. Your job is to use the input function to ask the user a question. I would say save it. So make sure it's a variable. And then actually you don't even really need to save it. And then from there, I would say code the different outcomes. So for example, I would say if number, right, equals 1, what should happen? Huh? Because so when you do one equal, that's setting it as a variable, you have to do equals to show that it's the same. So it's like asking, is it the same thing? Yeah. There's also not equal, which is exclamation point equal, right? So if it doesn't equal, that's that. But for now, we're just gonna be doing the equals 1, and then doing print, right? It is certain, so on and so forth. Maybe chill. No, honestly, I'm just looking at it like company. Oh, the most out. Yeah.
Are you guys on the second lab? Did you send me a link to this?
This one you already have. It was the one that we were working on last week. And I also did send you a link to it. Just in case you wanted to work along and in case you didn't have it. But you should have it in your PC and it should still be in your VS Code.
I still have VS Code, but my wait a minute. I know for some. Did I just get ripped off for no reason?
Oh.
Oh, wait, no preview available. Download it. Wait a minute. Wait, second lab.
Just open up VS Code. It should be in your folder.
Wait. Did I even save it? Wait. Where do I go to my folder? Do I have to push file?
Do open folder and file. Yes. File. So do file, open folder, and then wherever your Python folder is.
There it is.
Shift this one.
Here, now,
Yep.
quick, oh,
Shift.
over.
And then if you enter, it automatically types in a file. And then it's how you can vent it. So I would do it. That's fixed. Which one is it? No. One of the three that we've been choosing.
Elsie.
No.
No.
What's this?
That was the way.
And then what's it?
Oh.
And then whatever the one is, I think this like is or something. Yep, whatever. This one.
To write that thing?
Yeah, so we copy paste it. Yeah. And then now you would use L and then if it's not one, whatever your initial is gonna be. You're just gonna make your way down, essentially. So number one, two, three. No, for this one it's just equal. Or for else it's number.
Okay, okay.
So it's gonna pretty much copy this entire format. All the time. But it's pretty cool once you get it at the end, because then you're like, you gotta mess around with it, figure out
Okay.
just like random numbers.
So it's really okay.
And then don't forget the logo at the end.
Okay.
That's it. Random. And it's gonna follow that one. I would honestly just call sports and press here, and then just paste, and then just change out the number at whatever the print is.
Oh, without a doubt. Oh, without a doubt.
Yeah. Oh wait, now that's actually a smart way to do it. That's another way to do it. It's pretty good. That's okay.
No, it's negative punch. That's when I start putting it in.
I don't think it's really good. It's good.
Oh, it's a white.
Wait. Oh, I think I found my folder.
Okay, nice. Now look for the second lab. It should be in there.
I just found it.
No.
I found the second lab. Wait, let me check and see if this is it. Yup, this is the second lab you told me to find, Sammy. So I think I should be good to go. Oh, for the second lab.
Yeah, no, that's hard. Honestly, I would say.
But do you think we can walk through it? To problem 2 once more?
I already did that. I would say. Okay, so here, let me show you what's gonna happen if we do that. Let me turn on my computer because I've never really done that.
Made them all like that. I mean, that's how I thought it would be.
No, you're not wrong. Like, I see what you were trying to do. That's why I was like, it's smart doing it this way. The only thing that I'm not sure how it's gonna be picky about. Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Let me see if I could do. For some reason, I think you can't do numbers as functions.
I don't think it's certain. See at the bottom?
Oh yeah, because I just tried it. So I did. If I do this, I'm gonna just close it. Boom. History restored. Control N. And then it says syntax error cannot assign to a literal, which is just fancy ways of saying I think you're trying to change my data type, but I shouldn't be a data type that should be changed. Generally, I think that happens whenever you do some like number. So let me see if I can. No, yeah. I would say probably do like I would probably either just change to 1, 2, 3, just physically writing out the numbers instead of the letter or instead of the numbers.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, no, because I see what you were trying to do. That's smart. But for some reason, I think Python just doesn't like it.
It's like that 2 10. Oh, okay. Yeah, I was thinking. What's your I'm gonna show you what this like person. This copy all of that. Copy of this. Paste. And then just take time on your technique. Which you can do control V to paste or like kind of paste it manually. Also control because process will do it. Okay. No. So I do back parentheses. And then whatever you want the questions, right? So like that's just for you starting off the program and saying, all right, let me try to get a response from the user, right?
That's the if. I mean, that's the input, right?
Okay, that's what you're asking. So like, let's just say me and you are playing, right? So I'm thinking on the between 1 and 10, right? I have a set response program. So just ask me a question.
It's the right.
It is clear.
But this statement right here doesn't matter. It exists.
It does, but it doesn't. So that the statement that you're making is essentially the question that you're asking the person, right? Or like the question. So it's like, for example, I would say that it's you prompting the user for a question.
Oh, but it's already random, so I don't have to write. I have to write it. Still after it, right?
Yeah, you're gonna have to write the ifs, but you still need to get you still need to prompt the user to ask a question before those.
I'm still writing the ifs here.
Yes. Not parentheses. You don't have the parentheses. Parentheses is only for when you're non function. Close. So I would say if number, because that's the number that you're carrying. It's equal to other equals 1. Number 1, not the that.
Wait,
Those are just
Sammy. To be honest, are you catching up? Are you catching everybody up on the problem 1 that we just did last class?
Yeah.
Okay, just checking.
So then.
Yeah, I would do this do shift and then so you do shift and then the screen. Then you can enter and then print and then that's when you put print 1.
Right, space equals?
I set it to go. Look at
Parentheses.
Yes, sir. Trust me, it takes a while. That's why I'm like, these are maybe the first 2 to 3 labs are maybe just designed to like
reinforce, okay, syntax, this is what it looks like, form perspective, other things that kind of like apply. Okay, now the question is to ask the user, a question. Ask the user, so I'll do it on 10. So click on like that, answer. And then I'll do input. Write it down. Yep. Reading down their input. Yes, I put everybody. Variable. We're almost done with this. Right. Yes. Sorry. And then, yes. And then what do you like? You got to ask or get the person to ask a question, right? So how would you do that? Oh. Close.
No,
I would say ask the question.
ask the question.
Yeah.
Oh,
Run it. Now, this is right here. Down, now, go down there. That's where you ask your question. Yep. So now you get the question of what you wanted to ask. And then
just type it,
yep, just
no parentheses.
yeah, no, that in the terminal. Yeah, so
Without it now. That was the question. No, the answer?
yeah,
Is it right now?
yeah. So it chooses which one inside. Let's say what the answer is. So it's like it lights up whatever that is. So it tells without a doubt which is number 2.
Okay.
So it's like it's pretty much as if the concept is exchange the ball, ask it a question, but it has very generic responses, and then they get to that or gives the answer based on. Right.
Ryan is right, or anything.
No, you're running right. The only thing is red line from two. The input, I would say, ask the question, and then the parentheses instead of will I find. That's something that you ask after you program.
So delete this and put it after and put all the answer.
No, still leave your input. Parentheses. Ask the question, or quote every. Yes, quotation marks. Ask the question. No, literally like ask a question.
Wait a minute. Like, what do you mean? Oh, like type ask a question?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Right. Oh, hey. Start this. You don't have to I'll input it's not like this. I'm not continue typing. Or also I will just copy and paste. For example, mine's 31 and 32. So I would do this. Rather than written some magnum close to the list. Right, and then just change the number from 1 to 6. And then that way it's like a little bit of time. Because I think you guys get the concept. Right? What's it say?
So I asked for is not a flow. So this one still much about trying to go to
Um, So I'm going to figure out that's a good one. Yeah, Elijah. Yeah, if you want, we can get started online. Is it? Yep. That should be a good action. I'll type it on the screen. No problem. So that one. So for doing functions, I would do def. And then,
Well, you just call it what's function.
huh?
What's function functions?
Oh no. So we're creating functions.
Oh, okay.
Right. We're gonna talk more about this. So I'm just kind of like doing like a very quick intro. I do def and then some function name. For example, add, right? Parentheses. And then yeah, I would do number one and number two. Right, and I would probably do print number one plus number two. So I'll this is just an example, but the whole thing is you're gonna want to do something similar to this after. So like do something similar, but instead of add, do subtract, multiply or whatever. Right? We're just making like a very basic kind of janky calculator. Right?
And then go down and do print again. So,
Yep. So pretty much you see how it's like add and then print, and then you do, if you were to hit enter, this is all you do. Then you would do something like that, subtract two, right?
okay.
And then similar concept. Okay. So now that you finish that, okay, now that you try everything. Okay. So now ask me a question. Tell me. Yep. Oh no no. Can't do it. I'll take a question. This one you don't need a special character. This is just kind of like a working space. Yep, you can just type there. But a lot of the times that you run way it's type much and then I've sent the like sorry. It's a real brand and then it says mirror like so we scroll up and then about that it goes random number and then it says you rely on it. So which one's that? Yep. So we know that the number that it chose was time to match it up. Right? And then you could try it again, or it's going to be close differences. I would probably follow super quickly. This is honestly all just to get your own level of syntax, right? And then starting like next week, we'll probably do something more like actually really something. So that way it's like it's useful. So what we're doing right now is just creating functions, right? And then the function goes same way, that which means define. Variable name goes there, or function name goes there. But the only difference is instead of just leaving it as parentheses and then empty, for this one you always have to have something in there.
Okay, so why is it giving me this right to do this?
Oh, I see. You forgot one thing. Right. Like it was a little less.
Oh,
Uh, that. So I would say hover over. So
oh, the right.
yep, and then it says expected.
After the right.
Yep. You know this how it says expected something. Um, anytime you see it a little rescue, that means it's an error.
Right.
And then what does it say?
Perspective. Parentheses.
Oh,
Right. Oh.
how are you doing, Elijah? So,
Oh my goodness.
for what happened?
Oh,
Instant.
Never. Okay, so
Yeah.
what we're gonna be trying to do is make like a little calculator. So I'll show you afterward because the way that. So I would say start off with just making a function. So like you add, subtract, multiply, and then divide, right? And then after, so step one is gonna be, I guess the instructions aren't as clear. Uh, what we're gonna be doing is you want to build some functions for add, subtract, multiply, and then divide, and then just leave it at that. Then you're gonna want to do try to get the user to say, okay, now like what number do you want to multiply, or like what do you want to do, right? So then you would say input, get the what the person wants to do. So like choose one for multiplication, two for this, or like multiply, divide, whatever, and then try to match it up. So for example, I think it might just be easier to walk through this one together. Make sense?
kind of this.
Sure. So
What's like last part, first one?
yes. So ready? So we'll just do def subtract number one, number two, print number one, number two, def multiply, print multiply, def, right?
You had this one simple, right? Is that why they showed up that mess?
Oh no, it's because whatchamacallit, I have this is an extension. It's autocomplete. So it kind of like predicts what you're gonna type and then auto completes it for you.
Oh.
Right. So you could always do that in one way. I just do it to save time because it makes my life easier, especially since I use a lot of Python everywhere. And I just like it because it kind of always knows. I forgot the name of the exact extension. But if you wanted to do that, I think you could do telecode. It's not code here. So I would say it's probably gonna be this one.
Down under.
Oh, it's down there. Okay. So. Right off of it. So. The print that. Yeah, for the print.
No, it's not that one. It's not that one. I'll look for it and I'll tell you next time. But yeah, I would say just focus on doing these real quick.
This one.
So that way, we're like all caught up. Sticky keys.
Oh, not here.
Oh, that's what it was. I was like, I heard it somewhere.
Yeah.
Cool. So this is honestly just the first part. I feel like I should have given this to you guys. Which makes life a little bit easier. Do you have this already?
What?
No, on your computer, already coded.
Like run it?
No, as in, do you have what I have?
Oh yeah. I do.
Okay, sick. You got it? Uh,
What is it?
apart from the no, which when I was first learning, it took me a while to I can figure out which one it is.
Yeah, it's fine, but I was thinking about it.
You're probably looking for like some.
Yeah,
Forgot this. It might be called.
I don't know. I have so many extensions at this point. I kind of lost.
Oops. No, but
Yeah.
it's Cody.
Oh yeah, it is Codio. Here, do you want like an autocomplete? Here,
Basically, what Cody is. If you type something out, it's gonna say it's
just kind of gonna guess.
shit.
Wait, it's your job to know.
It's the same, right?
Nice.
So like above where
Here.
It's not two of us. It's not. Wait.
Now, it's not any time to type. Stuff like that. Always that I don't just go with I go for it, just tab.
Now this is more just like an autocomplete. So it's gonna be useful to some extent. It does make the minutes to. Okay. So here. We'll just continue on. So that way we can start wrapping up soon. So now we have our core functions of what we're going to be doing. Now what we want to do is try to get the user